Snow fell like soft whispers over the silent city, covering its restless streets in a blanket of white. Inside a towering glass mansion on the hill, the lights burned bright, but the man who owned them sat alone. Ethan Cole, the billionaire CEO of Cole Enterprises, the kind of man whose name alone made headlines, stared at the massive Christmas tree in his living room. It was decorated to perfection by professionals. Silver ornaments, golden ribbons, every light timed to glow in sequence, but it was empty of meaning. No laughter echoed off the walls. No scent of cookies or pine needles filled the air. Only the quiet hum of the fire and the faint echo of his own heartbeat reminded him he was still alive. Every Christmas for the past 10 years, Ethan had waited. Not for a gift, not for celebration, but for something, someone that never came. His family was gone, taken in a car crash one snowy night long ago. His wife, Emily, and their little boy, Oliver. The world saw him as a ruthless businessman, but behind every cold decision was a man haunted by the ghost of a home he once had. He threw himself into work, built an empire, and told himself success would numb the pain. But every year, when the snow began to fall, the silence grew heavier. Christmas became a cruel reminder of what he'd lost. If you believe in kindness, forgiveness, and the magic of second chances, take a moment to like, comment, share, and subscribe. Because sometimes, the smallest act of goodness can change an entire life. That Christmas Eve, the city below shimmered with celebration. Laughter spilled from cafes, families gathered around glowing windows, and the scent of roasted chestnuts drifted through the air. But on the hill, Ethan sat at his grand dining table set for one. His assistant had offered to stay, but he refused. He didn't want pity. He wanted peace, or at least the illusion of it. The butler had left hours ago, the housekeeper had gone home to her children, and Ethan had poured himself a glass of brandy, letting the warmth spread through his chest. He told himself it was just another night, just another year. Outside, however, in the freezing cold, a woman named Grace and her 8-year-old daughter, Lily, were trudging through the snow. Their coats were thin, their boots soaked, and their faces pale from the cold. Grace had lost her job 2 months earlier, cleaning offices at night after the company she worked for downsized. Her landlord had given her until the end of the month to pay rent or leave, and tonight she had nowhere to go. She'd promised Lily they'd still have a Christmas dinner, but the truth was, they had nothing. Only a small paper bag with 2 sandwiches and a thermos of cocoa she'd managed to prepare from the shelter kitchen. She had planned to spend the night in the church nearby, but when she saw the lights glowing from the mansion on the hill, she hesitated. Lily had been coughing, her tiny fingers trembling from the cold. Maybe, just maybe, the owner would let them warm up for a few minutes. Grace knew it was foolish. Who would open their doors to strangers on Christmas Eve? But desperation pushes even the proudest souls to knock. So holding Lily close, she walked up the long driveway, her heart pounding with fear and hope. Snow crunched under their worn-out boots, and the grand house loomed above them like something out of a storybook. Beautiful, unreachable, and cold. Grace hesitated at the door, looked down at her daughter's blue lips, and finally pressed the doorbell. Inside, Ethan frowned. No one ever came here uninvited. When the bell rang again, he rose slowly, setting his glass down. As he opened the door, the cold rushed in, along with 2 shivering figures. The woman's eyes were wide with exhaustion, her cheeks red from the wind. The little girl clung to her side, holding something wrapped in a napkin. "I'm sorry," Grace stammered, her voice trembling. "I didn't mean to bother you. My daughter and I just needed to warm up for a bit. We'll leave soon, I promise." Ethan stared at them for a long moment. His first instinct was to refuse. Strangers. On Christmas Eve. But then he looked at the child. Her eyes, big, round, innocent, reminded him of Oliver. For a heartbeat, the world seemed to stop. Without a word, he stepped aside. "Come in," he said quietly. The warmth of the house enveloped them. Grace helped Lily take off her wet coat, and they stood awkwardly in the grand foyer, afraid to move. The marble floor gleamed beneath their worn shoes. The scent of pine filled the air, and the crackle of fire came from the living room. Ethan gestured toward it. "You can sit there," he said, his voice rough. He disappeared briefly and returned with 2 blankets. Grace's eyes filled with tears. "Thank you, sir." You don't have to thank me," Ethan interrupted, trying to sound detached, but his voice betrayed him. He was trembling, too, though not from the cold. As the minutes passed, something strange happened. The silence that had once suffocated him began to ease. Lily, warmed by the fire, smiled for the first time in hours. She opened the napkin in her hands and revealed a small, misshapen cookie. "We made this," she said shyly, holding it out. "It's not pretty, but it's for you. Mommy said it's rude to go to someone's house without bringing something." Ethan froze. No one had given him a Christmas gift in years. His chest tightened painfully. Slowly, he took the cookie, his hands trembling. "Thank you," he whispered. Lily beamed. "You're welcome, mister." Grace watched the exchange, her eyes softening. For the first time, she noticed the sadness in his face, the loneliness behind the wealth. She realized this man, despite all his riches, looked emptier than she'd ever felt. Ethan offered them dinner. "I have more food than I can eat," he said, almost embarrassed. "You'd be doing me a favor." Grace hesitated, but the smell from the dining room was too tempting. Soon, the 3 of them were sitting around the massive oak table, one that had seen countless expensive feasts, but never such genuine warmth. As they ate, Lily chattered about her school, her dream to become a doctor, and how she wanted to make sick people happy again. Grace smiled but avoided talking about herself. Ethan, listening quietly, found himself laughing, a real laugh, something he hadn't heard from his own mouth in years. For a few hours, time seemed to stop. When Lily began to yawn, Ethan showed them the guest room upstairs. Grace protested, saying they'd leave soon, but he insisted. "The snow's too heavy. Stay tonight," she finally agreed. That night, as Ethan walked past the guest room, he heard soft singing, Grace humming a lullaby to her daughter. He stood outside the door, his hand on the frame, his heart aching with a strange, bittersweet comfort. For the first time in a decade, his home didn't feel empty. The next morning, sunlight spilled through the windows, scattering gold across the floor. The storm had passed, leaving the world sparkling and new. Ethan went downstairs to find Lily sitting by the tree, staring at the unopened gifts the staff had placed there weeks ago. When she saw him, she smiled shyly. "Are these all yours?" He nodded. "They were, but I never opened them." She tilted her head. "Then why have a tree?" He didn't have an answer. Lily picked up a small ornament shaped like an angel. "My daddy used to say angels watch us from the stars," she said softly. "I think maybe one watched us last night and brought us here." Ethan's eyes burned with tears. "Maybe you're right," he whispered. Grace came downstairs, embarrassed for overstaying. "We should go," she said, helping Lily with her coat. But before she could finish, Ethan spoke. "You don't have to leave yet. Have breakfast with me." They stayed. Breakfast turned into lunch, lunch into stories, and stories into laughter. When they finally prepared to leave that evening, Ethan walked them to the door. Grace thanked him for his kindness, and Lily waved, promising to visit again. As they disappeared down the snowy road, Ethan felt something shift inside him, a small light, fragile but real. Days passed. The house felt emptier than ever without their presence. Ethan couldn't focus at work. He kept seeing Lily's smile, hearing Grace's voice. Something about them had touched a place in his heart he thought was gone forever. So he did something impulsive. He asked his assistant to find them. It took a week, but finally he found Grace working part-time at a diner. When she saw him walk in, she froze, wiping her hands nervously. "Mr. Cole," she whispered, "is something wrong?" He smiled faintly. "No, I just wanted to thank you properly. That night. It meant more to me than you'll ever know." Grace blinked back tears. "You don't have to thank us, sir. You helped us more than we helped you." He hesitated. "I'd like to help you, Grace. You said you used to clean offices. I could use someone reliable at the company." Grace was stunned. I don't know what to say. Say yes, he said gently. She did. Weeks turned into months. Grace became part of the company and slowly, unknowingly, part of his life. Lily would visit after school, bringing laughter into his cold office. Ethan found himself waiting for those moments, for the sound of their voices echoing in halls that had once been silent. Then came the next Christmas. The mansion was different this time. The tree still glowed with silver and gold. But it wasn't the decorations that mattered. It was the people gathered around it. Grace and Lily sat beside him, wrapping presents for children in need. Laughter filled the air, and for the first time, Ethan felt something close to peace. That night, after dinner, Lily handed him a small envelope. "This is for you," she said shyly. Inside was a hand-drawn picture, 3 figures holding hands in front of a Christmas tree. At the top, written in childish handwriting, were the words, "Our family." Ethan's breath caught. He looked at Grace, who smiled softly, her eyes glistening. Tears rolled down his cheeks. "Thank you," he whispered, his voice breaking. Lily climbed onto his lap and hugged him. "Merry Christmas, Daddy Ethan." In that moment, the years of loneliness melted away. The empty mansion finally became a home. If this story touched your heart, please like, comment, share, and subscribe. Your support helps us keep spreading stories that remind the world that kindness and love can heal even the deepest wounds. Before you go, comment below. Do you believe one act of kindness can change someone's life forever? And remember, sometimes miracles don't arrive in grand gestures. Sometimes they come as a knock on the door, on a cold Christmas night.